Today we are going to be going over how to figure out the main measurements from a sketch, meaning something that we've gotten up on a roof and sketched it ourselves, and then how to order the material and what you're going to need to have to be able to order the material using a sketch. So the two main things you're going to need for this is you're going to need obviously a sketch with some detailed measurements. Now a quick note, I would not be trying to figure any complicated roofs out in terms of what you're going to order, just because they're going to be too difficult to do the math to figure out the surface area. You'll be able to figure out, the ridge, valleys, eaves, rakes, primer, all of that stuff you could get correct. But to get the surface area, you're probably going to need to pull quick squares. So you could measure all of those other things and then pull quick squares, or you could just pull a premium Eagle View report. The only time that I would be doing this type of thing is on a pretty basic up and over type roof like the one we're seeing here, or if you have a hip roof that's just a square, it has no it's not like L-shaped roof, it's just a square regular hip roof. You can figure that out as well with some geometry. But we're just going to go through this. We're going to figure out all of these measurements. We're going to take a look at the photos, and then we're going to walk through how to order the correct material for this job. Uh, when you would be doing this would typically be if it was like an out-of-pocket estimate, or if a homeowner, sorry, an out-of-pocket job, or if a homeowner really wanted you to give them an estimate. And the last reason would probably be if you were double checking the measurements against what the insurance company gave you and it was a easy roof to measure. So the first step is we're going to be figuring out the tear off. So we're going to just do an area calculation. So we're going to do 34 times 17 for our length times our width. And then we're going to times that by 2 because there's two sides. So once we do that, we're going to get 1,156. And then we're going to do the other side, 42 times 17, and multiply that by 2 for the two sides to get 1,428. And when we add those two together, we're going to get 2,584 square feet for our tear off. Then we're going to add up our two ridges, the 33 and 42, to get 75 feet. We're going to add up all of our eaves, so our 34 times 2 and our 42 times 2 to get 152 feet of eaves. Our valleys are non-applicable in this situation. Our rakes are going to be this 17, these green lines, so 17 times 6 essentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get 102 feet. And our perimeter is just going to be the eaves and the rakes together, so that's 254 feet. So this now gives us the basic measurements that we need to determine what we need to order. Now the second aspect of what we're going to need is photos. So first we'll go through all the things that require these basic measurements, and then I'll pull up the photos that I took while I was doing a sketch or looking at this house so that we can figure out what of the accessories we need to order. So going through this, we've done this in some videos beforehand, but we'll kind of walk through this at a slow pace. So for the field shingles, we're rounding up to the nearest 0.00, 0.33, 0.66, and we're going to take our tear off, or our surface area in squares, and multiply that by the waste factor. So our tear off is 2,584 square feet. So first, we're going to divide that by 100 to get into squares. So now we have 25.84 squares. And then we're going to take that 25.84 and multiply by 10%. Now we could probably get away with a lower percent waste on this. We might be able to get away with 5 or 7%, but just for the sake of practice and kind of starting out until you get familiar with the waste percentages, we're going to go with the 10%. So we're going to throw that in our calculator. Get 25.84 times 1.1, which gets us 28.42. and we're going to round that up to the nearest 0.66 to have 28.66 squares of field. Next, we're going to do our starter strip. So it says to find out how many bundles of starter to order, take your total perimeter length and divide by 100. So we're going to take our 254 divided by 100. And that 254 divided by 100 is going to equal 2.54, which we are going to round up to the nearest whole number and have 3 bundles of starter. After that, we'll do our ridge. So it says to find out how many bundles of hip and ridge, take your total hip and ridge length and divide by 28. So we're going to do 75 divided by 28. That's going to come up with 2.68. And then we're going to round to the nearest whole number to get 3 bundles of ridge. Now we're going to do our total squares. So we're going to take our field, 28.66, plus our bundles of starter, plus our bundles of ridge, divided by 3 to convert them to squares. And we're going to just simplify this formula. To get 30.66 total squares. Now we can go back and do nails. For nails, we're just going to divide our total squares by 15. So 30.66 divided by 15. That's going to come up with 2.04. In this situation, since nails is one of those things that we oftentimes have extras with, and since it's so close to 2, we're just going to order 2 boxes of nails. Next, we're going to do plastic caps. So it says to take the total tear off in squares and divide by 20. So we had 25.84. We're going to divide that by 20. Come up with 1.29. We're going to round that up to 2 boxes of plastic caps. After that, with drip edge, we're going to take a look at our photos on drip edge and see how assuming we have a photo of it, if you can see here, it looks like there's gutter guard that's going to be covering up the drip edge. But there's no drip edge on the rakes. That's important to notice. So we're going to need to be installing drip edge on the rakes, but it looks like on the eaves we're not going to be installing drip edge. So and also taking a look at our photos, it looks like the fascia is white, so we would talk this over with the homeowner, but we're probably going to go with white on the drip edge. So with drip edge, it says to take our total perimeter, but since we're not going to be installing it on the eaves, we're just going to take our total rakes and divide that by 10. And then we're going to round up, and we're probably going to do something like 13 pieces of drip edge, white. We'll also want to put a note on our work order and keep track of a note to tell the crew that we're only going to be installing that on the rakes. After that, we're going to look at some of the accessories. So now we're going to need our photos. So let's take a look and see if we have any ridge vent. It doesn't look like we have ridge vent, although we do have high profile hip and ridge shingles. And so if we're able to get that, we would want to make sure that we're ordering that instead, and that the insurance company is paying for it if it's an insurance estimate, or if we want to talk to the customer about that and go over whether they want to go back on with the high profile or not, if they're paying out of pocket, and any potential price difference. For now, we're going to keep with just the regular ridge cap shingles. So there's no ridge vent. Let's look at how many turtle vents we have. So we have 1 in this photo, 2. I think that's the same photo as the first one. Yeah, it is. And then on top we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to have 7 box vents. And for pipe boots, I see 1 in this photo. And I see oh, nope, that's just a furnace vent. So we're just going to have 1 pipe boot. There's not any turbine vents. There's not any power attic fans. Our paint and caulk, we're going to do based off our total squares. So we have 30. So we're just going to go with 3 and 3 for paint and caulk. Now let's take a look at our ice and water barrier. And we're going to have to actually do some of the steps on this to calculate the ice and water barrier in felt. So the first would be multiply the eaves measurement in linear feet by 2, since we're installing 2 rows of ice and water barrier on the eaves. So we're going to take 152 times 2. That gets 304 for step 1. Step 2 is add in the valley measurement. Now we don't have any valleys, so we're going to skip to step 3. Convert linear feet of ice and water barrier to square feet by multiplying by 3. So now we're going to do 304 times 3. And we're going to get 912 square feet of ice and water barrier. Now that we've done that, we're going to, under the ice and water barrier, it says once you have ice and water barrier in square feet, then all you have to do is divide by 200. So we're going to do our 912 divided by 200. This is going to get 4.56, and we're going to round that up to the nearest whole number and get 5 rolls of ice and water barrier. Last, we're going to do our felt. So we're going to have to figure this out since it's not an insurance estimate. So it's going to say take our total tear off in square feet and subtract what is covered by ice and water barrier. So we have 2,584 square feet for our tear off, subtracting by our 912 feet that's covered by ice and water barrier. And we're going to get the coverage that's needed for felt in square feet. So that's going to be 1,672 square feet of felt. And then the next step says to convert square feet of felt to squares of felt by dividing by 100. So we're going to do 1,672 divided by 100, which is going to equal 16.72 squares of felt. And then if we go up to our felt step, it says once we have felt in squares, then we're going to simply divide by 10. So 16.72 divided by 10 is going to be equal 1.67. We're going to round that up to 2 rolls of felt. So that's going to be all of the material that we need to order. That's going to be everything that we need to order for this roof, and that is how to take a sketch, calculate the lengths and that are needed for our ordering, and then using that information to figure out what we need to order for a roof.